In 2024, there was a CEO named Brian Thompson. In 2025, there was not. He had been shot dead. No one but his family mourned his loss. Because Brian was the CEO of United Healthcare, a company that monetized denying access to care for dying patients. As he bled out in the street, his equally bloody money could not afford him the care that he denied others. It's been a year since then. Has it changed anything? Of course not. As one of the main characters from today's story said almost 25 years ago, money is the only thing that motivates people. Maybe Jeffrey Skilling was right. Today, United Health Group is the third largest company in the US by revenue. To be fair, Jeff is an authority on greed as a motivator. Just 2 decades ago, he was the CEO of a company almost as large. His greed didn't kill him as it did with Brian. Instead, it killed his best friend, decimated his reputation, and annihilated his freedom. This is the story of Enron, the company that went from 5th on the Fortune 500 to bankrupt in less than a month. Before we get formally started, I literally cannot put ads on my YouTube videos right now, so if you want ad-free content, please do hit the subscribe button because it would make my day, and also for the reason I just mentioned. Thank you. Originally to be called Enron until potential investors pointed out that that was actually the word for animal intestines, Enron was founded in 1985 by 2 natural gas companies completed by the founder, Kenneth Lay. The fun part for me is the fact that the logo was designed by Paul Rand, which is a name you might not know if you're not a graphic designer, but I do because I am a graphic designer, and I'm here to tell you that that is just about the funniest person that could have possibly been in charge of creating this logo. You know the ABC logo? That's his. It's been basically unchanged for 60 years now. IBM, that's his. UPS, 40 years, that's his. Ford, Westinghouse, Yale, American Express. He is a chapter in a book you could study. And what design did he come up with for Enron? A crooked E. Holy profit, bro! He didn't know anything about the company, by the way, like anything about the fraud that was going to ensue, and he died before it was ever announced to the world that that was what was going on. He just had a vision from the future. I know it's early in our story, but I actually kind of have to level with you. Enron is, and this is true, the most boring company ever. The people inside of it are very fascinating. I'm going to tell you all about them, but I need you to trust me as a narrator for this story. If you find yourself wondering, how did this work stop. You don't care. You have to trust me. You do not care. As simply as I can put it, what Enron actually does is they were natural resource scalpers, and they would buy and sell energy like gas and electricity the same way that people will flip rare Pokemon cards, and then they try to resell them for more than they paid. I used Pokemon in that example. It is mind-numbingly boring, but that's it. Day Trading But Stupider was America's most innovative company for 6 consecutive years, which, by the way, a feat only ever achieved by Enron. But it is not an exaggeration to say that Enron was the darling company of Wall Street at the turn of the century. They were getting recognized by every title. Their leaders were heralded as visionaries, and most importantly to investors, the stock price had cajillion X'd. But the truth of the matter is that they had been lying starting as early as 1987. Because out of all of Enron's business ventures, only one of them was actually making money. They're oil traders. And when I say that they were making money, I'm lying. They were not doing that, but they were also lying. What they realized is that gambling on oil futures, you know, the price of what oil might be at some point, is actually really hard because it turns out that you can also lose money doing it. Yes, you should always lie about everything. That's what I'm here to teach you. Okay. What was I talking about? Oh, right, gambling. We're talking about gambling. They figure out that they can actually lose money gambling, and they don't like that. So they come up with another idea. And that idea is to just fake the gamble. just make it seem as though they've made bets that actually paid off by creating shell companies that they trade with so that investors think that we're super profitable and they keep on buying our stock. What if we did that? Can you think of any reason that would be a bad idea? They sure couldn't, and so that's what they did. And if you're wondering, is that not obvious? Yeah, it kinda is. If someone has a 100% win rate, something's wrong, because this is gambling, and the best poker player in the world still has bad days, weeks, months, and years. And it is not like the founder and CEO, Ken Lay, was in the dark about this. He had multiple advisors warning him that there had to be something wrong with the oil division and that he needed to take action. But Ken did not come from money. He was the son of a priest, and he was not about to go back to where he came. And so his response in the face of this information was not to fire or even discipline these employees, but to write these people in charge of the lie to, quote, keep making him millions. And this is the moment in which Ken Lay becomes Heisenberg. Now, the best part about this is the fact that they were not being discreet about it at all, with one of the offshore banking accounts famously belonging to a supposed Lebanese man named M. Yass. Years later, a documentary crew asked one of Enron's accountants what he thought that name meant. You guys aren't ready for this video.
M. Yass.
What name did you suspect that was?
My ass.
I've watched this clip like 20 times. That accountant answered so fast. If he were a cowboy, he would have 30 bodies just from quick draw duels. He has been waiting for centuries for that question. But this did work for Enron for a short time. But as I'm sure you can appreciate, fraud is a cancer on any business. Eventually, the cancer cells will grow so large that you can't ignore them anymore, and then it kills you. These weren't criminal masterminds who figured out how to make fraud work. They were being transparently reckless. For example, one of the My Ass guys put $2 million in their own account as a treat. You know what? He deserved it. He worked really hard to steal and lie about shit. And one day, they realized that $90 million had gone missing, and they had gambled it away in 5 days. Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I miscounted somewhere along the way. Whoops. 5 days. And they also burned through all of Enron's reserve money. And when you lose that kind of money, you kind of have to get on the phone and call your dad. And so they do. And they go to jail. And of course, Ken acts like this was a complete surprise and that there was no way to foresee that this was going to happen, despite the fact that we have direct record of him being contacted and warned about this. And this was effectively the first time that we got to see what Enron might be doing deep down. But you see, the thing is, this company had not gone platinum yet, so to speak. And so this went largely under the radar until we looked at it retrospectively and said, uh-oh. But Ken now has a problem. And that problem is the fact that all of the people that were making him money, and I do mean all, because it was only this division, are now in jail. And that means that they aren't making him money anymore, and that's bad. And so now he needs to find a new answer to the question of how am I going to make money? And that answer's name was a man named Jeffrey Skilling. Jeffrey Skilling is a smart man. And we know this because one time when he was asked if he was smart, he responded, "I'm fucking smart." So, yeah, that's basically everything you need to know about him. And I mean this as rudely as these words can be interpreted. This man is the original Elon Musk, down to the performative masculinity and surgical hairline fixing. I'm sure that if Twitter existed in the 90s, he would have been posting the most unfunny shit there of all time. Why all smart people have big foreheads? I think that the hair just bleeds off when they're also smart. Now, my favorite footnote about his leadership is how he set up performance reviews, which I lovingly refer to as the rapture. Every year, all of the employees would be rated on a scale of 1 to 5. And if you were rated a 5, you're fired. And actually that part is fine. The problem is the fact that he required that 10% of all employees had to be rated a 5 at the end of the year, no matter what. Straight up America's Got Talent style. Both of you were great. He has a better sob story. You gotta go. It's like this.
Hey boss, you wanted to see me?
Oh, yeah. Why don't you sit down?
Okay. What's up, boss?
You're fired.
What? Did I do something wrong?
No.
Is the company struggling?
No.
Is my job becoming obsolete?
No, we'll hire someone to replace you.
Damn. That sucks.
I'm sorry.
Can I apply for a job while I'm here?
Sure. What job?
My old job.
What are your qualifications?
I actually used to work at Enron.
I don't know. I wasn't alive back then. It was probably like that. But I'm sure that you can appreciate that this is not how you make your traders work harder. That's how you foster a community of piranhas that want to destroy anything with a pulse. But Jeff's real claim to fame is his partnership with the accounting firm Arthur Andersen. Arthur Andersen was one of the 5 gods of accounting firms. There were 5 big ones, and you might notice that I am using the past tense were and was. And that is because this scandal was so bad for them that it single-handedly sunk their ship and made it so that there was only 4 of them. What Jeff somehow miraculously convinced Arthur Andersen to allow him to do was mark-to-market accounting. What is that, you ask? Thank you for being engaged. I'm happy to answer that. The old lame way of doing business is where somebody says, I want to buy a video game and I have $20 and I would like to spend it on that video game. And then they spend it on that video game and they get a video game and the other guy gets $20. That's the old lame way. The new way is where I say, I don't have $20 right now, but I want that game in the future. And then you say, okay, and you write it down as if you made $20 right then anyway. That's mark-to-market accounting. And yes, they could in fact never pay, and they never have to correct that. If you weren't listening at this point in the YouTube video, this is the crux of Enron's scam. Rewind 10 seconds. That's it. No, it's not lying. It's mark-to-market accounting. Now, let's say that the mark-to-market accounting wasn't happening for a $20 video game, but instead $1 billion power plant in India, a nation which could not afford it. And when I say could not afford it, I mean 50% of India's population lived in poverty at the time, kind of can't afford it. They should just throw a party at the power plant. I'm not sure that you'd want to be in it. There's no one running it. Who's going to be partying there? But no worries, we can all write this down as a huge success, say that we made billions of dollars and give all the executives multi-million-dollar bonuses for their hard work. Cliff Baxter, the chief strategy officer at Enron and Jeff's closest friend, repeatedly warned him that this could not be sustainable and did need to be changed. And he is the man that I mentioned eventually from shame of Enron, and I'm making no light of that at all. Of course, his words fell on entirely deaf ears. Basically, the second that mark-to-market accounting was allowed to exist, the motion could not be undone without confessing to billions of dollars in fraud. The more that they lied, the bigger the company's perceived value was, which means that the next idea had to be even bigger. Rinse and repeat until they were the biggest player in the energy space. Kim Jong-un recently banned wearing leather jackets so that he was the only person who could do it. Do you know why? It's because he can. It's a tale as old as time. The people in power throw their body weight around because no one will stand up to them out of fear of repercussions. You know, Enron didn't just trade other people's energy, they also owned a lot of it. They acquired Portland General Electric to get a foothold in California's newly deregulated energy business. They were both profitable, again, this is on paper, and powerful. They embodied, like fully, the spirit of a mobster. I don't remember what I made this slide for any reason. I have no clue what the context of this was, but I want everybody to have it at their access so that they can use it for whatever purpose they want. But going back to the Enron mobster thing, for example, no bank would dare employ a financial analyst who did not have a strong buy recommendation for Enron unless you wanted to be their enemy. One bank was shut out of $750 million as a stock offering because they had one dude who didn't recommend the company. And so the bank fired him. And Enron, in turn, pinched their cheek and then said, molto bene, and then gave them $50 million in business as a reward. Of course, the irony being the fact that this big menacing mob boss was nothing more than two kids in a trench coat. And this is where Jeff's hypermasculinity was on full display. I have to believe that he knew full well that he was holding on to nothing. But he thought that if he could just bluff hard enough, it wouldn't matter what he held. Because if he could trick the public into believing that his perception that he wished upon in them was in fact reality, he would be fine. But that requires that he bluffs every hand that he holds. And sooner or later, someone's going to call him on all of his lies. Hey, Jeff, we haven't had any new type of bad ideas lately. Do you have anything new for us?
What if we traded internet bandwidth like gas?
Okay, that's not terrible, actually.
It'll be worth $40 billion.
Well, that's not true.
.com.
What?
It's a .com bubble.
I think we should get you to bed.
Al Gore.
Whatever. But to give an air of legitimacy to them being founders of the internet, they make a deal with Blockbuster to essentially make Netflix 7 years early, which is, of course, legitimately innovative. It's just too soon for the technology to actually support it, but in theory, Enron would handle the logistics and Blockbuster would handle the promotion. But in typical domineering Enron fashion, this imploded basically from the jump by way of their desperate aggression. They say that this could be worth $1 billion in like the span of a decade, but at the same time, they're like a dog begging for scraps at Blockbuster's dinner table.
Can we get a movie out today?
No.
Can we get a movie out today?
No.
Can we get a movie out today?
Get out of my house!
Oh well, at least I made $1 gazillion.
You didn't make $1 gazillion. I'm sure you've noticed by now, but the through line for this company is that Enron creates a new venture that loses a lot of money and then they act like they made a huge profit. But every time that they lie, the gap between perception and reality widens on both ends of the spectrum. They say a bigger positive number when the number in fact is actually going down. 4 whole years before their collapse, they were $7 billion in debt, while claiming that they had $22 billion in assets. But like, how? Like, yes, sure, they have mark-to-market accounting, but this is transparently fraud. The SEC signed off on mark-to-market accounting under the premise that, of course, it wouldn't be used the way it was. You cannot misrepresent your revenue. And if anyone saw how things were actually working, they'd be dead where they stand. So how are they successfully hiding it? Let me introduce you to my GOAT, Andrew Fastow, the Chief Financial Officer at Enron. Jeff brings him on and says, hey man, can you hide $7 billion of debt? And instead of showing fear in the face of adversity, he locks the fuck in and actually does it. I know that I'm explaining this in a kind of goofy way, but he was legitimately the all-star of committing fraud. He would create companies to buy Enron's debts and then move them constantly in and out of Enron's books and into different shell companies like a 3-card Monty player to make it look like the ventures were actually sought after so that they'd never have to admit that they were all gigantic losses. And this isn't even to mention the fact that since he owns these companies, he's setting it up so that he personally gets a kickback for taking on Enron's risk on top of his already existing salary. He would even get major banks involved. And when I say involved, I mean that they were in the group chat to help with this blatant fraud, these poorly disguised loans. Right before quarterly earnings calls, he would sell the ventures, I sell as in air quotes, with these failing ventures with the full understanding that Enron would pay them back and with interest. And this would accomplish 2 separate things. Number 1, it would get the debt off of their books when it mattered. But second, it also let them pretend that they made a multi-million-dollar profit. I'm telling you, this guy was the GOAT. And these deals often weren't even believable business decisions on paper. I'll explain what I mean. We're gonna play a game. 5, Okay, I'm gonna explain the rules first. You're Merrill Lynch, okay? You're a gigantic American investment bank. And your job is to make rational, well-informed decisions about risk and return. Okay, so My Little Pony and 9 are not qualifying answers. Here's where you give me your answer. What I'm gonna have you do is I'm going to have you pick any country that you think Merrill Lynch should be investing in. And if you say the same one that they did in 1999, I ban you for the rest of the stream because you shouldn't be in business. I'm a bank. Okay, good. If you're buying 3 power plants in Nigeria, you're banned. This was flagrantly not a purchase made on any sort of legitimate investment interest. This is fraud. This video has been pissing me off to make, so I didn't think of a transition for this. California, hooray! Energy had been deregulated there, meaning that the prices of energy companies could actually charge for their product could basically fluctuate as wildly as they wanted to, because they basically had the Uber system where it's like time of day, time of year. Okay, we'll charge $1, we'll charge 100. Who cares? We can choose whatever. And you might remember, if you've been listening very closely, as I know all of you have, if you've been listening real close, you might remember that Enron has a business where they make money trading on whether or not the price of electricity goes up or down. Say, you know what would make the price of energy go drastically in one direction or another? If the supply was fucked with. So what's stopping them from calling up a power plant, telling them to turn off the power for a forced outage for several hours, make a bunch of bets, buying low and selling high, and then rinsing and repeating? It turns out, absolutely nothing. And so they did that. And in a state where there was absolutely no shortage of power on paper, constant power outages and blackouts became the biggest issue concerning Californians out of absolutely nowhere. Businesses would have to shut down midday because it was literally too expensive to pay for electricity. They bankrupted one of the largest utility companies ever because they couldn't pass their newfound astronomical expenses onto consumers. And they were directly responsible for the second ever recalling of a state governor in the US because of how unpopular his handling of the situation was. And pause, just for a second. Do you understand how bad things need to be for a governor to be recalled? We have had governors since before the US was a country. Gray Davis was the second and most recent to ever be kicked out midterm. The Flint water crisis governor wasn't kicked out, and he's literally facing charges. After everything was said and done, the energy crisis had cost California $30 billion, and the Terminator was elected to replace him. While this was all fully in view, Enron had found themselves on top of the world, with their stock price at an all-time high of $90 in the year 2000. And everything. The lying, the mark-to-market accounting, the debt hiding, the resource abusing. It was all worth it. Because as Jeff will tell you, money is the only thing that motivates people. Ken realized that the ship that he had steered had only been able to go forward on its path because of the mountains that Jeff had moved. And so early in 2001, Ken has Jeff take the helm of CEO at Enron. 6 months later, Jeff would resign. Of course, he claimed that it was due to personal reasons, but you don't just leave your role as CEO of a Fortune 500 company out of the blue while it's in its prime, much less in less than a year. Of course, retrospectively, we can realize that Jeff was just trying to escape his burning business before it crumbled to ash. The lies had grown too large. An entity can get a loan. That's fine. But they get a loan because they believe that they'll be able to pay it off by earning enough and then also pay off extra. That's how a loan works. But Enron was not making money. They were losing it. And so the only way that they could pay off a debt was by getting another loan, either legally or illegally, which is something that you are never, as any entity, supposed to do. It's a Ponzi scheme. Eventually, you'll run out of people who can spare you $1. which is exactly what happened, right as the rest of the planet thought that they were on top of the world. And now they had to face the music that they themselves had written. The fallout was swift. They admit to a $1 billion loss, and soon after, they can see that they overstated earnings by roughly $600 million over several years. Yet they insist that they will restructure and come out strong. The SEC immediately starts an inquiry into Enron's books. As Ken Lay attempts to reassure his own employees in an all-hands meeting that they would ultimately be well, Enron's actual accountants at Arthur Andersen are actively in the process of shredding 1 ton of documents just blocks down the road. By December 2nd, 2001, the company had announced bankruptcy. All employees were given 10 minutes to retrieve their things from the building and leave for good. More than 20,000 people were rated a 5 that day and made to attempt to re-enter the job market just months after the towers had fallen. Jeff and Ken would both attempt to blame Andy for the fraud at large. Only Jeff and Andy would ever serve time. Ken died in 2006, both before he could serve time or see Hamilton on Broadway. Jeff served for 14 years before being released in 2019. His youngest child dies of drug overdose while he's serving time. Andy served 5 years in prison and 2 at home, and now speaks for tens of thousands of dollars to speak out about ethics where he gets paid to explain how he got away with it until he did not. Did I ever tell you guys what their slogan was? I don't think I did. It was Ask Why, which is, of course, ironic for several reasons. The entire premise of their fraud's longevity and success was the fact that no one could see how they made their money. Their company was a black box. In fact, asking why would, in many cases, get you fired or blacklisted. But perhaps the most ironic reason is the fact that Jeffrey, along with all the other executives, did not feel as though they needed to ask why. They knew why. It's because of money. Because money is the only thing that motivates people. Thank you so much for watching this week's Meowkit Mayhem. These each take about 200 hours to record, so if you have not pressed the buttons that YouTube has taught you to press over the years of watching it, please do that. That would help me a lot. But the other thing is, press the hype button, which I believe should be down there somewhere. It allows you to promote smaller creators like me onto the algorithm. That would help a lot too. Thank you for pressing buttons. You've always been so good at that. My piece of advice for this video is, if your fridge smells, there's a chance that there might be a trough in the back behind the produce section that just has water in it. So go ahead and check that out. If there is, dump it. Thank you. I stream these on Twitch. You already know that. Same username. I will see you next time. Peace.